Hello everyone, and welcome to this third iteration of the Slant 3D podcast, for lack of a better name. Today we're going to go over some of the 3D printing news like we normally do, and we're going to add in a couple of news segments. And that first news segment is, what are we up to? We're going to try to update folks about like some of the stuff that we're doing at Slant 3D, because we don't want to continually do videos about like new product releases and that kind of stuff. So we're just going to kind of talk about it and fill you guys in over here on a lot of these things. So this one is actually something that we've been considering for a bit. Should we make filament? We've made filament before. I should say we've sold filament. Should we sell filament? That would be more accurate. Slant 3D, we do mass production 3D printing. We have very large print farms. And historically, we have made filament for a lot of the stuff that we do. The reason we do that is because the raw materials for filament are very low cost. The raw beads for like injection molding are what go into 3D printer filament. But when those raw beads, which cost a few dollars, are turned into filament, they suddenly become worth dozens of dollars. And even though we buy large quantities from many different suppliers, quality control has always been a problem. Consistency of supply has always been a problem, and of course cost is a problem, because our fundamental kind of operating goal is to be reliably competitive with injection molding, because that's the direction that it's all going. And it's a very clear issue with the industry, is the fact that 3D printed parts are expensive because the raw materials are really quite expensive compared to injection molding. So we've made our own filament. And recently, we released a video explaining why filament costs as much as it does. And that video got a lot more attention than we thought it was going to, which was kind of odd. We didn't really call that when we put it out there. We thought it was kind of interesting information, but we didn't realize that it would be that interesting. The video got many thousands of views. I think it passed 10,000 or so, which for a small channel like ours is actually quite a few. Especially within the 3D printing world, and a video that is that specific. But based on that play, it seemed like this is a pain that other people sort of felt. So we looked at it a little bit more. We stopped selling filament because, quite frankly, it's hard. It's a tough business to be into, because the community is really tough to work with. 3D printing nerds are very persnickety. And really tough to support well in a way that you want to if you're making a good product. And when we're focused on creating good quality results for our clients who are using us for mass production, we don't want to distract ourselves with creating other products. That being said, supplier problems for us have always been an issue. So we always knew that we were going to bring more filament production in-house. And we recently made some moves towards expanding that to where we might have some excess capacity on our filament extrusion lines. So we were toying with the idea of, should we create a filament brand for Slant 3D? And the initial response was no, we shouldn't do this, because there's not much we can contribute. 3D printer filament is a commodity. Everybody does it, everybody makes it, and there's no way to really differentiate yourself from anybody else. So we weren't interested in it, except that we're not a filament company, and that makes it interesting. Here's why. So in any given company, you have to follow the rule of threes. And in fact, we'll link to the old the filament video before that, so you can get the details on this. I'll try to skip over it. But basically, a company has to profit 30% off of whatever it is that they're making in order to pay for administration and accountants and lawyers and staying in business and staying registered. That's just administrative overhead that has to go into a product for a company to exist in order to be profitable and grow. So if we are purchasing filament from a supplier, we have to pay 30% to them simply because they exist as a separate entity. We save that by bringing it in-house. We don't make a living by selling filament. So we don't have to sell filament with that 30% margin on top of the actual operational costs, which means that we can make filament and basically break even on it and actually recoup the investment from the savings that we get in the rest of our company. The fact that we get much more affordable raw materials for our main print farm business pays for allowing us to sell filament at cost, which is sort of interesting. The other component of it is, since we are making the filament for our use, we are basically a chef that eats their own cooking, and very few filament manufacturers actually eat their own cooking. They make filament all day long because they were making something like that prior to that 3D printing coming along, but they're not involved with it, and they don't know the irritations that the product can create. For example, like a catch at the end of a spool. You have a filament runout sensor, but it can't work because the filament is tied off at the end of the spool. That's a ridiculous problem that shouldn't exist, and yet it still does, because the manufacturers are not the end users. So those are two areas that we thought we could really contribute something to this, to where we could basically sell the most affordable filament out there, which is a big deal to us because it allows the college kid in a dorm room or the school or the other print farms to have ready and low-cost access to materials, and it allows the mass production of 3D printed parts to be more accessible. And since we're not selling printer ink like everybody else is doing, we can recoup our investment in other areas and make a profit in other places, and give everybody else the benefit. So it's a net good for the community because it's very affordable material. And since we have to make it ourselves for our own use, it keeps us honest, so we make good quality material. So not cheap filament that you can get for $15 or something like that, but good quality filament that you might actually be able to get a hold of for $10. And that's really interesting to us. But we wanted to get your guys' feedback on it. So I think that's why that's on here. What do you guys think? Should we start producing some filament? And what would you want to see? Would you want it to be PLA or PETG? I think we'd have to be very limited about it. We're very careful when we release this kind of stuff to have a very simple, pure, well-trodden kind of minimum viable product there. So what would you be looking for? And what are the problems that you've had with filament? We're considering it right now. We don't know if we're gonna run with it, but it's a really interesting idea. So we want to see if it's something that we should do. So please, literally, let us know down in the comments. And I know we ask that in every video, but seriously, we need this feedback. Would you guys be interested in another source of filament that was good quality and super cheap? That sounds like a no-brainer, and yet at the same time, I don't know what other people are thinking about that kind of stuff. But that's kind of where our thought process is right now. So we thought we might as well bring you all in and let us know what you think about it, because it'd be really interesting. And yeah, we do have some capacity coming through to where it's possible. And quite frankly, for me, a side thing of it is the fact that I think a lot of filament manufacturers just need some dust shook off of them. So the fact that we're able to do it very efficiently, because we have to, because we need it for the core part of the business, it helps to accelerate people to find better ways of doing it. Put a robot arm at the end of the extrusion line so you don't have as much labor into it. Be a little bit competitive, because filament has commoditized out to like this $25 per spool cost, and it shouldn't be. It should cost nothing to make 3D printer filament. It is a commodity. But filament manufacturers aren't messing with materials. They're not improving colors. They're not improving quality over large scale. I mean, most of them don't even have colorimeters at the end of it all. And I think this is something that we could push on to kind of force some people to get better, to justify either the premium quality statement or other kind of stuff. And yeah, so we kind of want to do this, but we do want to know what you guys think about it. That being said, into the news. So, first piece of news here. We have 3D Systems to pay $27 million. Okay, this story. 3D Systems, big company, you might have heard of them before, recently were fined $27 million for sharing files that they shouldn't share. And this is something that people really need to be aware of, because this is a corporate faux pas, though I can totally see how it would have happened, but systems have to be in place to make sure this doesn't happen. 3D Systems ended up sharing what were essentially proprietary government files, which are 3D model files, with their partners that happened to be in China. And that doesn't really fly anymore and never has. This is a big mistake because you're essentially sharing military work with who is essentially not a direct ally. This is a big mistake, but it's so easy to go into because I can totally see how an employee at 3D Systems would absentmindedly take some files that they saw that they might not know were this sensitive and say, we're going to send them over to the Chinese team and they'll get them printed out and send them back to us and it'll be cheaper. So they're being fined $27 million because they didn't protect the files. And this is something that companies have to be super careful about. And it's a corporate system should not allow this kind of stuff to occur, especially in this day and age. But I think it's almost a side effect of how blasé everybody's become about 3D files to where they're so common. And everybody's used to sharing them and having something printed over there and have it shipped in. Or, I got my D&D miniatures printed by the fast resin company that's overseas or something like that. It's not unreasonable to see why an individual would do this, but it is a big deal for a company to do this. And 3D Systems, $27 million actually hurts them. In the realm of corporate fines, that's a big hit because 3D Systems is not a very big company comparatively. I mean, that's a full couple of percent of whatever their revenue is. And that's a big deal because most companies only profit 5 to 10%, and 3D Systems has been going back and forth with that all the time. So this is a hit that they feel, but they also deserve it because that is something that should not occur. Protection of the client's files is the number one job of any contract manufacturer. And then that should be even more emphasized when you're dealing with military or highly proprietary files of like a corporate entity and that kind of thing. If you're not doing the D&D miniatures, you got to be stupid careful with how you're taking care of that stuff. That's a big deal. Next story. Titancraft out of beta. Okay, this one I'm jazzed about. So Titancraft is a project that has been basically kickstarted over the last few years. And it is a D&D model generator. By the way, not the reason I was mentioning that before, but serendipitous. Titancraft allows you to basically pull in components of a D&D model of a figurine, both clothing, body style, and then scale and adjust it. And it's allows you to create pretty doggone original stuff. You're using a toolbox of parts and pieces, but the positioning control of the characters is fantastic. And quite frankly, the UI of Titancraft is really, really good. While this is focused on D&D miniatures, I hope more people will create these types of, I'm going to say CAD programs that are very easy to use, but still really powerful. The fact that Titancraft allows you to basically create an original character, an original figurine that can be positioned and moved and that kind of thing as easily as they are able to. I mean, there's basically zero learning curve on it. Bodes well for the creation of 3D models. And I wish somebody would create a CAD program as like a competitor to Tinkercad that provides this level of control and adjustment, because it'd be so much better. Tinkercad is a horrible software to give to somebody to work with because it is just powerful enough to where you can get confused, but so underpowered to where you cannot do anything useful. And it's kind of sad. Whereas Titancraft, you're able to create a very good detailed model because you're able to move eyebrows and move the facial structure and adjust the bones of the figure and that kind of stuff, which are all very simple things technically to do, hard in context and at scale. I'm not trying to belittle that, but functionally, that's not a research problem to solve. It's very implementable. And it can be applied to so many other areas. Thingiverse has had the customizers for forever, but if somebody wanted to build a website that was just STL 3D model customizers to where you're ever able to pull in parts and pieces and like stretch them out. Like I want a hinge and stretch that out to 3 inches and have it come out and be printable. That is exciting because there's so much stuff that could be done there around like spare parts and that kind of thing, which is not being done right now. And it'd be super cool if it was. But I love the Titancraft thing. If you haven't messed with it, you should just go mess with it just to see how it works because it is really nifty. Okay, let's see here. EOS and Bauer are gonna produce personalized ice hockey helmets. Cool, yeah, that happened. Another customized thing. There are a dozen customizable helmets out there. They have done football, bicycle helmets. Yes, I have seen a hockey helmet before. This is fine and dandy, continue to be done. Wish they'd reach out to us. We print TPU pretty well and have done foam for forever, but beyond that, it's not that big of a thing. It's another lattice printed out with SLA and that, or not EOS, probably SL or SLS, but it is what it is. The personalized helmets and protective gear is a really great application of all this stuff, but it's not going to push 3D printing to the next level in any sort of way. And quite frankly, a personalized helmet doesn't add that much more value to what's already out there. Okay, let's see here. Last story in the news. Nano Dimension gonna try to buy out Stratasys. Nano Dimension has tendered an offer towards Stratasys for $1.3 billion to purchase Stratasys, which is hilarious. But it might actually go through because right now Stratasys is trading at about a $1 billion valuation. So Nano Dimension is giving them about a 30% bump on it. Stratasys, of course, stock right now is about $14. The 14 to $15 right at the moment. And Nano Dimension would value them at about $18 a share. So Stratasys got a little bit of a stock bump the other day when this news came out. If you don't know Nano Dimension, that's okay. They're everywhere, and yet very few people really know what they do. They have always been kind of focused on creating three-dimensional electronics. Their core technology is how to do conductive sort of printing in order to create very small electronic components that are 3D printed so that you can increase density and have three-dimensional wire transfer and all that. There's a lot of benefits to it to create very compact electronic components. They have also done like pick and place components and that kind of thing. So they cover a fairly wide gamut. But they've come into some money, apparently, and Stratasys seems to be useful for that. Probably to expand into just standard 3D printing so that they can expand their portfolio. It's almost appears to be kind of a desktop metal-esque type move where you buy every ancillary type of technology in order to get a hold of it. And Stratasys definitely has some ancillary technologies that Nano Dimension, I keep on wanting to say that VoxelJet for some reason, but Nano Dimension could benefit from. That being said, Stratasys is there. I don't have too much of an opinion on them. They're one of the oldies but goodies that have been around since forever. But it's interesting because Nano Dimension has tried this before. A year ago, they were trying to buy out or take control of Stratasys. So this is something they're really hung up on. And considering the two of them never dated, I have no idea why that continues to be a thing, but it continues to be a thing. All right, let's see, anything else there? Well, no, guys, we're gonna cut it right there. That's kind of the update in the news for this last week. Let us know about the filament idea at the beginning of the show. That is something we really need to consider with a lot more intention. And we'd love to have your guys' feedback on it to see what you would want to see if we decided to do that. Because filament right now is not as good as it could be. And a lot of folks seem to be awfully comfortable with the situation. And we might be in a position to shake some folks up to help improve the industry, lower the cost for the people trying to get into this and trying to create cool stuff. And just stir the pot a little bit and maybe push some folks ahead. So yeah, let us know what you think about that, and we'll see what we can do. Have a great day, everybody.